Hello, my name is Nicholas Chambers, and in collaboration with the Transformation Life Center and the Tiffin-Seneca United Way, I would like to take you through a brief presentation on the homelessness and affordable housing crisis here in Tiffin, Ohio, and a more broad national level. And so to begin, we're going to be looking at a brief overview, which we're going to be focusing on what is homelessness, followed up by the factors that contribute to it, some federal, state, and local data on homelessness, the impacts of homelessness on individuals, and finally talking about affordable housing. And so begin, what is homelessness? By definition, according to the McKinney Homeless Assistance Act of 1987, as amended in 2009, a homeless person is someone or a family who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, and also includes a subset for individuals who are leaving certain institutions or emergency shelter situations. The three types of homelessness. We have transient, which is when a person is briefly homeless, only requires a few nights stay within a shelter or other place of assistance, which is the most common type of homelessness in the United States. This is followed up by episodic, which is when a person is briefly homeless, but on a more frequent occurrence throughout their life. So they only require a few nights stay, but it's not a one-time thing. And finally, there is chronic. Chronic homelessness is when a person is in a prolonged period of time when they require many nights within a shelter when they are homeless, which is frequent throughout their entire life. And so next up, we're going to be talking about some different factors that contribute to homelessness. So as this chart here shows, we have two main factors we're looking at. First up is the severe housing cost burden. In 2021, there was estimated about 7.1 million American households that were experiencing this severe housing cost burden, which means that they spent roughly about 50% or more of their total income on their housing alone. And so while this size had been gradually decreasing since 2014, 2015, as of 2020 and into 2021, it has gone up again to where it's now 25% higher than where it was in 2007, which is when they began to truly monitor this factor. Next up is doubling up, which is when there is a sharing of a household by others for whatever economic reason they need to. And so this is another measure, and there were approximately 3.7, which as the chart here shows, 3.67, which roughly 3.7 million American households in 2021. And some of these doubled up individuals and families have very fragile relationship with those that they share their households with, which often puts them at a greater risk for being homeless. And so while this has been on the gradual decline since 2014, 2015, as of 2021 going into 2022, it has gone up to a very slight increase again, where it's going back up now. And so next up, we're going to be talking about different data and statistics. So on a more national level, as of 2022, homelessness has been on the rise since 2017, experiencing an overall increase of about 6%. And according to the January 2022 point in time count, which is when the different organizations go out to count just in the community how many homeless individuals there was an estimated total of 582,462 people experiencing homelessness across the United States, which roughly translates to about 18 people out of 10,000. And so, guys, you can see on this chart here to the left, this breaks it down, that number down by different categories. So we have individuals and families, then followed up by chronically homeless, veterans, and unaccompanied youths, which and then the bottom there shows you the percentage roughly of those that are sheltered or unsheltered. And so while you can see on the overall, the majority are sheltered, there is still a substantial portion that are not sheltered. And so now looking at some Ohio statistics. So, roughly speaking, there is about 10,249 people homeless on a given night in Ohio, which roughly translates to about nine homeless individuals per 10,000 in the general public. And so, while a majority of these people as of 2018, 2019 have been sheltered, there is still about 13% that are not, with those that are individuals more likely to be experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And so finally, looking at some more local statistics, looking at the United Way of Greater Toledo, which is the closest available statistics for the United Way of Tiffin-Seneca County. As you can see, the greatest requested need on the left side there was housing and shelter. And on the right side, this breaks that request down into different categories. So as you can see, the two highest were finding shelter, followed up by rental assistance. And as you can see from this general overview, homelessness is not a small issue in the United States. It is a substantial issue that must be addressed through a variety of means, one of which being affordable housing. And so ALICE numbers is the last number we're going to be looking at, which stands for assets limited, income constrained, and employed. And so what this means is that these individuals or families are earning more than the federal poverty line. So on a technicality, they are not in poverty, but they are not making enough to where they can afford their basic necessities. And so on the right side there, we get a breakdown of this by age, with those that are under the age of 25 more likely to be in poverty and in ALICE numbers compared to others of different age ranges. In the state of Ohio, out of the total number of households, roughly 13% fall under the poverty line, 25% fall within ALICE range, and 62% are above the ALICE threshold, which is different for each state depending on those numbers. And the impacts of homelessness. So, move myself real quick. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, homelessness among certain populations has been on the decrease since 2020 to 2022, and this includes veterans by about 11%, families with children by about 6%, and those under 25 by about 12%. However, there has been an increase in those that are single individuals by 3.1%, and those that are chronically homeless by 16%. Those that are most likely to be overrepresented in these numbers include those that identify as Black, African American, or African, as well as those that identify as Indigenous, which include Native Americans and Pacific Islanders. And so, talking about the effects, those that are in homelessness are more likely to experience the following, which include HIV/AIDS, alcohol and drug addictions, mental health illnesses, including depression, anxiety disorders, trauma, and suicidal ideations, tuberculosis and other serious health conditions, different forms of racism, discrimination, bias, and prejudice, a lack of access to adequate food and protection, limited resources for social services, and various barriers to healthcare and adequate public infrastructure. And so what is one of our solutions? We're going to be talking about affordable housing now. So you can see right there, rental housing crisis. The rent burden was the most common and most severe among lower income households, according to the Government Accountability Office. And so what they found was that affordability has declined over the years because the supply of having these low cost affordable units hasn't kept up with demand. And so with this increased competition, since roughly around 2017, these different units were more likely to have various problems such as water leakages, rodents, heating problems, all because the low supply means that those that are seeking them are more likely to be desperate enough to take whatever they can get. And so as of 2017, about 48% of these different renter households were experiencing a rent burden. And it was the most common for those that came from lower income households, with roughly 3/4 paying over half of their income in rent. And so finally, this little chart here gives a little breakdown of that renter household rent burden dynamic, with you can see those that come from extremely low income and very low income having a sizable portion of severe rent burden, which means, again, that their rent costs 50% of their total household income. And so in summary, affordable housing provides one of the many solutions that on a federal, state, and local level that organizations and governments can work together to achieve as a way to address the homelessness crisis on a state, local, and federal level. And government agencies or nonprofit organizations such as the United Way and the Transformation Life Center are hoping that from this presentation you get a better understanding of what is going on when it comes to the homelessness crisis and affordable housing crisis, and uses information as a way to gain awareness of the situation. So finally here, these are some of the references used, which you can go back and look through if you want to see where this information came from. But otherwise, I would like to thank you for listening to this brief presentation and to have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.